Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're jumping back into the combi again. We're going to try and get this roof welded up. If you didn't see last episode, I'll chuck it up here, but I do a little bit too much talking. I waffle on a little bit, but I just want to explain myself and go over everything just in case someone wants to do it as well. But yeah, I want to get this roof all welded up. There's some other pieces I'm going to have to weld onto it later, but I just want to get most of the frame and everything so I can mount it up and get it to start working. So let's jump into it. Strap yourselves in. Let's go. Okay, here we go guys. So I think I've got it pretty well sorted. I have jiggled it around a little bit and bent it a little bit more and stuff like that. Welded those two seams. This one I've polished back, this one I have sanded back and got it pretty close to where I need it to be. I'm then going to put this strengthening rib in here. I'm going to put a couple more across the top. I am thinking I might put also like a fan in the middle of it. So the other ribs will wait for now, but like this one I know I need to put in because I need somewhere for the clamps to clamp onto when I close the roof. And to get it over the edge of the roof, I think this will work pretty well. This is the same stuff that I made the frame out of. I'm going to tack it all together now. I'm going to take it back up the top and I'll show you what I mean. But this should hopefully, as it like clamshells down, this bit I should be able to put a little bit of the mount on so that I can then clamp it down. So I've got the welder ready. I'll chuck everything on and put a few tacks on here and then we can test it out, see how it's going. Hopefully the fan turns up soon and we can get the other piece moving along, but I also got some other welding we can do near the hinges. So let's try this, we'll chuck it up there and see how it looks. Okay, there we go. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry, it's raining pretty heavy and we're up near the roof. But I just thought I'd show you before I forget. So I've just welded a couple of little spots on here just to get it nice and on there, so we can test it. But my plan is, because I have this edge here and this edge, was to bring this out a little bit so I can put a hook on here, or like that piece, and then a clamp that will then go onto this piece, and then I can pull it down. And so I needed something that was gonna be nice and strong, and so I should be able to weld this on the top, which I should be able to linish back for the cover to go on, and then underneath to get some real strength. And then I'm thinking also under where the little bit is going to be, if I double up underneath just to give it a bit of strength, it should be pretty good. So I have that piece here. My other plan is, like, in this area up the top, is to put one of those pop-up like fans. That way I can pull all the air out, I can pop it open, draw the air. But then I'm thinking, which is something I'm still trying to work out, is if I have it pop up and the fan's on the side, if it rains, is it going to ruin the fan? Which I think it will, because the water's going to come in sideways. But then thinking maybe I could just make a little flap that goes over top, hopefully to protect it. But my other thought is, if it rains, then the top comes down and it's just the way it is. So in two minds about it now, because I would like to still run, like, say, 2 ribs up the top through the middle here. And my thought is, if I space them out enough, and from what I'm looking at, it's like a 14-inch fan, like the distance of the thing. So therefore, if I go 14 inches apart, stupid inches, if I go 14 inches apart, then I can put the 2 strengthening bars in, and then that way, if I do end up putting the piece on the top, it can just go through. Sorry, I really hope you can hear me. It is raining pretty heavy and we're up near the roof. I'll try and do this the best I can, but that's my plan at the moment. My other plan now is to get some more aluminium, because I need some more of that square tubey stuff that I made all this out of. And then I also need to get some struts to go on the side. I have an old pair from the Porsche actually that popped the bonnet open. I think are going to be too strong, but my plan is, if I can play with those a little bit, I should be able to work out where I need to put the strength into this side here. Because if the strut's going to be here and then point up, I'm going to have to put some strengthening stuff here, which I think I'll do similar to this along the top here, which will strengthen it up. That way I can have it bolt through and the strut can go up onto here, which I'll put a little wing mount on, and then it can work. But I also, while I'm at the shops, I'll have a look at that, see if there's some nicer struts that maybe a longer one will help, or I don't know, we'll work it out. But let me get right back. I'm going to go to the shops and I'll be back soon. Okay, back from the shops, bit of a haircut and some aluminium. I didn't get a strut. I want to get this frame all sorted. Having a think about it and looking at them, I think it's probably best if I just go over everything, get it all how I think I want it, and then work on getting the strut to work with that. I think we'll find out. Anyway, I have the one that I've welded in already. So have this bottom one welded in. I put a few tacks. This one I had to crack because I had it just a little bit off. I started welding up the top here. I'm going to now, if I can get the whole thing in view, I'm going to put one through here, and then the same as this one on the top side. I have everything ready to go. I have chopped everything up on the bench, other than I'm about this much short on one piece, finishing off the two ribs in the middle. So I have two almost good, I have two lengths that are almost good enough, so I'm going to weld those together first, use the other ones as a brace. I have braced it all up, so one on this side, one on the back side, and that way I can keep this square while I weld it all up. And then welding montage. So I'll take the time lapse on. I'm going to try and weld as much of this together. Not all of it. I'm going to have to take a little bit of time so it doesn't get too hot and warp. It's aluminium, it's going to move anyway, but let's get to welding. Let's go. Damn guys, that worked out really well. I'm really happy with it. I think it came out really well. I haven't, other than starting this project, I haven't done aluminium welding in a number of months, and it comes back to you. It's like riding a bike. I, for one, don't use, or I didn't use a foot pedal in this. You can, I think, if you're using something that's really fat, like say 5mm aluminium onto like something thinner, I think it is nice to be able to ramp the amps up on something on the heavier side, on the thicker side of the metal, and then cool it down once you get a bit of heat into it, so you're not like burning through the smaller stuff. But this being both the same size, I was able to just put the amperage on where I wanted it, have it nice and melty after like 2 or 3 seconds of having your torch running, and it worked out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with everything that's I'm pretty happy with how everything's looking. I now need to let it cool, then we can then chuck it up on the roof and see how everything goes. But I'll give you a look. I think up here I've spaced it out pretty nicely between the hinges and just a little bit in the middle. I don't want to weld the whole thing. I think that's a little bit overkill and you don't really need it, especially when the top is going to be Sikaflexed on. I think it'll be perfect the way it is. I have tried to weld these nice and big where the hinges are. I think that one though, I'm going to have to, that one and this one, I'll extend a little bit just to give it a little bit more strength. These bits I have run on their side, so that way I can run some insulation on here. Like so, once the roof's on, insulation in here, and then a little bit of insulation in here. I think it'll just give the pop top the same kind of insulation as the rest, and I think it looks awesome. So right now, we're gonna give it a good little while, let it cool up, get it nice and cold, chuck it back on the roof, and then if I need to adjust it in any way, I can do that. So give me a sec and we'll chuck it up. So as you saw, I welded this one all up. It's all looking really nice. I do have to grind off a few little bits and adjust a few little bits and pieces, but very minor, just like taking off a little bit of weld so that when I put the cover on it sits nice and flat. But what I have been trying to work out is how to clamp the roof down. And so I have been playing with this kind of latch. So it normally hooks over this piece, which will be on the roof, and this. And then as you pull this down, it clamps it, and you can adjust it a little bit with the thread. But what I've found is it gives a lot of room in this triangle, so when you chuck it over, like it fits over nicely, but like there's this much room that I can make this smaller. And as I'll show you when I go into the van, but as you're going in, like just the headroom is just a little short, and I'd rather not whack my head on this piece. So I have made this one. So it's not perfect, but I just trying it out to see if it'll work. And so as you can see, I can raise the thread up quite a lot, which will then pull this up a little bit higher. Yes, I can adjust this bit, but I still want the adjustment with, and by closing this bit I get more of adjustment. But because this hangs low, I wanted to try and minimize the length of the whole thing, and by making this piece, this bit just threads in, but making this piece a little bit smaller, I have thread all the way up to here now rather than only up to here, so I can gain this 20 mil or whatever it is. So let's take you up into the van. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here's the headroom. So as you come up, like this piece hangs down here, and so it can just be a bit painful. Okay, here we are. So threaded it in, and as you can see, I was able to adjust this up quite a lot. I had this screw, so mounting this screw, this whole thing down a little bit further, and it worked, but like having this down now, it still hangs out a little bit, but I think it's much better than it was by making this a little bit shorter. So now putting this on here, and I can clamp it down, and it works pretty well. So this is a little bit odd shaped, but it works pretty well. Looks a little bit like a little frog, and it's working quite nicely. So as we can see, the roof is like sealed quite nice along this edge. I do need to do a little bit manipulation at the back here. It's a little bit high. I don't have all the screws in the back, so it will move a little bit, but I just wanted to try and get this clamp situation kind of sorted. It is playing up a little bit, like because this screw is going into the wood, it's lifting the roof or the inside of the roof, whereas I need it to push up on the metal and then clamp the metal L bracket, or like L stock between the two to clamp it down. And so a little bit of messing around still. I'll just have to clearance behind where I put the nut and bolt in here that will hold this on. So that works pretty good. I do need to clean up the roof a little bit more. So after we welded it, I still have some welds to grind down, because when I put the roof on, I want it nice and flat. I'll clean these up, a few other bits and pieces, but I want to get everything else sorted. I want to make sure I have all this working properly. I still have got to put some screws in here. I then also have to work out how I'm going to mount this. I'm thinking with the hinge, I will weld some threads onto the bottom and weld on the top, so therefore the hinge will sit flat with threads poking through that I'll be able to then bolt into here. It will be a bit finicky to put on and off, but I think it'll be nice and strong, and then that way when I run a seal that I run under here, it can just go over the top of the hinges without having to go over like bolt heads and stuff like that. I'll show you that a little bit later, but I think everything's looking pretty good. So next up, I'm gonna do another one of these for the other side, get the proper length of angle in here so I can get it all situated nice and tight. Maybe I'll test some seals on here to see how they squish as well, because I want to make sure it's all working before I finalize anything. So let's jump on the bench, cut this other piece up, weld it, put it in here, and see where we get to. Okay, so here we go. So I ended up chopping the bottom piece off. It had a little bit like this, that then when this comes down, you can then put a padlock through here. So instead of that getting in the way, and then maybe I'm thinking I might be able to turn these up to give me a little bit more clearance here, but also that just sits on there nicer and doesn't hang down. So that one's pretty good. I have the other one that I have then made this dodgy loop up, and we're going to put him on here, and then I have marked this for putting on the little hoop, what do you ever call this piece? And so I've got it made up, marked it, drill it, put it on here, and then I'm thinking I'm going to have to work out how to make this piece of aluminium onto this part of the roof. I'm thinking I'm going to have to screw it through so that way I can then like sandwich everything, so everything's like nice and stiff and nice and tight, and then that way when it comes down it can clamp and it doesn't move around. So let's get into chucking this piece on, and see what we get to. I had you on my head and I think I fogged up the screen a little bit, so the footage wasn't the best. I might play it. If not, I'm doing a recap. So it's looking pretty good. I have then doubled it up and have done the same over here. I also put a little bend in this piece. So if my footage didn't work, I put a little bit of bend in here. So when it was coming down, coming down onto here, it was touching the aluminium edge and also the mount or the hinge piece, and so it was like kicking it up and making it a little bit weird. So all looking pretty good. Everything's mounted. I think I'm going to put some nutserts in here and in here, make it a little bit stronger. I don't really want to be able to have these pull through, and then once the roof's on, like it'd just be near impossible to try and put some nutserts or something in here. I was thinking of trying to put like a piece of steel in here that I could then tap, but I think it's just a little bit too hard now that I have it all welded in. Bit of hindsight, but that's what I'd do next time. I'd probably just get a piece of steel that's the same thickness, tap it, put it in here, and then I could line the screws up with that. But if this doesn't work, I'll then have to cut it, and I'll probably have to cut it in here, slide the piece of steel up, get it into this position, screw it in, do that. But for now, I think some nutserts in here will be pretty good, nice and strong. I'm not putting too much tension on it, but I still want it to be nice and solid and hold down onto the roof. So next up, I need to work out how to mount this to this piece, and then also have the wood and everything all as one. So as I was doing it before, I had a screw that went through here into the wood, and then as I was clamping it down, everything was moving. And so which made me think, okay, I need to come up with a way to push these two together, mount them all up nicely, and have a nice finishing edge as well as like pushing it all together. Sorry, finishing edge on the underside so that it all looks nice and not just like some screws in here. So a little bit of time to think about this, work out how I'm going to do it, and I'll turn you back on when I work it out. And that's going to do, guys. I am really happy with that. It's all welded up. It's working really well. I put the hinges in and made sure it worked as we did last time. But just wanted to see how it worked. As you can see, I have a little bit of fettling to do with just some of around the edges. And like, because the roof, like it was originally a tin top, and then when they put the pop top in, they've bent up the little surround, which is quite nice. It comes along and then goes up that little 5 mils or something like that. And it works really nice, but it just has buckled a little bit around the edges, so therefore it doesn't quite sit perfectly, so I will have to just go around and fettle it a little bit. I have looked at a few rubber seals, and I think I have found one that should work and look really nice and actually keep it dry. So that will hopefully come in the next couple episodes. I've got to get it first. But I think next we're going to try and get this strut in, finish welding out. I have a little bit more welding to do on this frame, where the struts are going to go, but that'll come in the next episode. I just didn't want to make this too long. I've already talked most of this episode. I'm really sorry. I just wanted to go over everything. But yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon.